Lesson 30, Jacob at Peniel, so he's on the way back. We left off yesterday. Jacob had his wages changed multiple times. His herdsmen were not getting along with the herdsmen of Laban. Time for Jacob to go back home because God also commanded him to go home. And so Jacob had rounded up his wives, his children, his herdsmen, all his cattle. They packed up their tents and they waited for Laban to do what? Where did Laban go yesterday? Brody? Shear his sheep, 3 days' journey away. And now Jacob saw the opportunity, so they packed up the tents and everything. What did Rachel grab before she left? Colin? Father's idols. And they take off and they go. And it takes a few days, 3 days, for the word to finally reach Laban. Laban hears that word and probably leaves the sheep shearing, and he himself gets on some type of animal, and a couple other men with him, and they hurriedly get after Jacob and his family and all his riches. And it takes how many days to catch up, did we say, Micah? 7 days we left off there. It took 7 days for them to catch back up. Okay? So, we're in Genesis chapter 31. We left off there at the end of verse, let's see here, 24. Because God came to Laban the Syrian in a dream by night. So as he's going to try to catch Jacob, God tells him, and take heed that they'll speak not to Jacob either good or bad. So don't mistreat him. So let's pick it up at verse 25 here of chapter 31. Then Laban overtook Jacob, meaning he caught up to him. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the mount, and Laban with his brethren pitched in the mount of Gilead. And Laban said unto Jacob, What hast thou done, that thou hast stolen away unawares to me, and carried away my daughters as captives, taken with the sword? So Laban is trying to pin it on Jacob, saying, well, you must have forced them to go, because you took them away, carried them away as captives with swords. Wherefore didst thou flee away secretly and steal away from me, and didst not tell me, that I might have sent thee away with mirth, and with songs, with tabret, and with harp, and hast not suffered me to kiss my sons and my daughters? Thou hast now done foolishly in so doing. It is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. But the God of your fathers spake unto me yesternight, saying, Take thou heed that thou speak not to Jacob either good or bad. And now, though thou wouldest needs be gone, because thou sore longest after thy father's house, yet wherefore hast thou stolen my gods? So let's take a look at a few things here. Okay, let's take a look at a few things. In Laban's conversation with Jacob, without even taking a look at what Jacob says back. Laban is scolding him here. To me, he's unjustly making some accusations about Jacob that you've stolen away these wives as captives with a sword. That's true. Or that's not true. What is true is that, yes, he fled away secretly. Now, if somebody tries to flee away secretly like that in the middle of the night, what does that make you think about them? What do you maybe think? If you're the boss, you're the owner, and some of your employees are sneaking away with stuff in the middle of the night. Colin? Well, that's true. They wanted to go away, but what are you worried about as the owner? Megan? The only reason you're doing it so sneakily, so secretly, is because obviously you must be doing something wrong. Maybe you took a bunch of my cattle before you left. Maybe you took a bunch of my goods, and Laban has that in his mind, the goods, because what goods were missing? He must have stopped at home, or word came to him from his home. What things were missing at home? Jaden? His idols. Those things were missing. So you've stolen away in the middle of the night, sneaking away, and you've stolen my idols. Okay? Maybe in his mind he's thinking those other things. So those are some things there. Okay? I think it's a flat out probably lie in verse 27, what Laban says. He says, Why did you go away secretly? I would have sent you away with mirth and with songs, with tabret and harps. No, Laban, I have a hard time believing that, because all along the way, whenever Jacob has wanted something, you've always realized the only reason you were blessed was because of Jacob, and you've tried to get as much out of Jacob as you could yourself. I don't believe Laban for 1 minute there. I think Laban would have argued with him. He would have done some things. He would have changed his wages again. He would have told him, no, you really didn't earn all that. He would have done something. I don't believe Laban for 1 minute when he says, I would have sent you away with great fanfare and blessings and all the things you ever wanted. I don't know that that's necessarily would have been the truth. Another thing that I don't quite trust Laban on here is, he says, well, I guess it's not a trust thing, but he says, it is in the power of my hand to do you hurt. In verse 29, he's saying, look, I could hurt you. And the only thing that's holding me back is that God told me not to. In fact, I don't think it would be out of line for us to think, I believe Laban would. I believe Laban would have done something miserable to Jacob or his family to teach him a lesson. And the only thing holding Laban back was not that he loved Jacob, not that he loved his daughters, but I think the only thing holding him back was he knew he would be punished by God. This God is the God that blessed Jacob, and in so doing turned blessed Laban. And Laban knows that. That's the only reason I think that Laban doesn't do something here, is because he's afraid of God. Not necessarily because he's out of love for Jacob or out of love for his own daughters. Okay? So we see that. Laban's very angry. He's not real happy. And then we have that last question. Why did you steal my goods? Now let's see the answer of Jacob. And Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I said, peradventure thou wouldest by force take by force thy daughters from me. So he's afraid that my wives, your daughters, you would keep them away, you'd take them away by force. With whomsoever thou findest thy gods, so wherever you find those idols, let him not live. In other words, put that person to death. Before our brethren discern thou what is thine with me, and take it to thee. For Jacob knew not that Rachel had stolen them. Foolish on Jacob's part there. He should have been a little bit more careful, because unbeknownst to him, what did Jacob just do? What did Jacob just do? Amber. Yeah, he sentenced his own wife to death. Sentenced her to death because he said, whoever you find it with, kill him. That's their punishment for stealing. It's a harsh sentence. Unbeknownst to Jacob. You could imagine maybe even Rachel standing there and the color draining out of her face, knowing that it's her that took it, and her husband, unbeknownst to him, just sentenced her to death. That was a rash judgment on Jacob's part. He should have thought a little bit more about that. But he said it. God is in his providential hand watching over Rachel here. But let's see what happens now. So he's going to search for those idols. And Laban went into Jacob's tent and into Leah's tent and into the two maidservants, but he found them not. Then went he out of Leah's tent and entered into Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken the images and put them in the camel's furniture and sat upon them. And Laban searched all the tent, but found them not. And she said to her father, let it not displease my lord, that I cannot rise up before thee, for the custom of women is upon me. And he searched, but found not the images. Okay? So, again, we see that foolish decision. We see Rachel here manipulating the situation. I can't get up, Father. I can't get up because it's not the custom of women to stand up before men. You would think that Laban would have immediately, right? It's just like you at home with your younger brothers and sisters. You're playing hide and seek. Maybe you got a real young brother or sister home, and they can't keep it quiet. Right? It's not under the blanket, or it's not hiding in the closet. Don't look there. And you know, now I know immediately where to go look, right? And you go look in the closet, or you look under the blanket for whatever object it may be that was hidden. Okay? You would think that a Laban would immediately go, you up. Servants, go through that pile of stuff right there and look for my gods, my images. But he didn't. But again, it's God's providential hand there. All right, and then finally, how is this relationship going to end up? Okay, How is it going to end up? Well, verse 36, and Jacob was wroth and chode with Laban, and Jacob answered and said to Laban, what is my trespass? What is my sin that thou hast so hotly pursued after me? So he's kind of getting after him here. He's finally, you didn't find anything, and now I'm going to he's going to kind of get back to him here in the next few verses, and he's going to show his anger that he has with Laban. Whereas thou hast searched all my stuff, what hast thou found of all thy household stuff? Set it here before my brethren, and let thy brethren, that they may judge between us both. And he knows there's nothing he can put there. This 20 years have I been with thee. Thy ewes and thy she-goats have not cast their young, and the rams of thy flock have I not eaten. That which is torn of beasts I brought not unto thee. I bear the loss of it. Of my hand didst thou require it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. Thus I was in the day the drought consumed me, and the frost by night, and my sleep departed from mine eyes. Thus have I been 20 years in thy house. I have served thee 14 years for thy 2 daughters, and 6 years for thy cattle. And thou hast changed my wages 10 times. Except the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had been with me. Surely thou hadst sent me away now empty. God has seen my affliction, and the labor of mine hands, and rebuked thee yesternight. Now Jacob is filled with a hot rage towards Laban. You accuse me of all these things. Put before me the evidence. You make an accusation like that, prove it. Show me the evidence. You can't. You have nothing. You have nothing here. And all those years I served you out in the field. I was out there in the heat. I was out there in the cold. And you know what? Whenever a wild animal came and killed one of your sheep or goats and took it away, I paid for it. I gave one of my own as payment. Whenever one was lost and couldn't be found, I gave my own payment. If it had been up to you, I would have walked away with nothing. But it was only by the grace of God that I was able to come and walk away with anything. God blessed me. And that's why he came to you last night. And that's why he came and he rebuked you, Laban. Okay? Jacob, you can imagine, 20 years of anger and frustration all pent up. And he kind of lets it fly here at Laban. Okay? Maybe not the right way of going about it, but he lets it go. Verse 43, Then Laban answered and said unto Jacob, These daughters are my daughters, and these children are my children, these cattle are my cattle, and all that thou seest is mine. What can I do this day unto these my daughters, or unto their children which they have borne? Now therefore come thou, let us make a covenant. Okay? What's the definition of a covenant again? Colin?
Relationship between someone.
Yep, what are those 2 F words? Sydney? Friendship and fellowship. Let's make a covenant. Let's make a bond of friendship and fellowship with each other. This isn't the covenant that God makes between himself and man here, but this is a covenant, just a friendship. Okay? Now, therefore, come thou, let us make a covenant, I and thou. Let it be for a witness between me and thee. And Jacob took a stone and set it up for a pillar. And Jacob said unto his brethren, Gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, so a big pile. And they did eat there upon the heap. And Laban called it Jegar-sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. And Laban said, This heap is a witness between me and thee this day. Therefore was the name of it called Gilead. And Mizpah, for he said, The Lord watch between me and thee when we are absent from one another. So some people will say that when they're going apart from each other. They'll say Mizpah to each other. What does that mean? Obviously, the Lord watch between me and thee when we are apart from each other. We're friends here together. Okay? But now, because we're going our separate ways and we won't see each other maybe for a few weeks or a few months, Mizpah. God watch between me and thee while we are apart from each other. Okay? Verse 50, If thou shalt afflict my daughters, or if thou shalt take other wives besides my daughters, no man is with us. See, God is witness betwixt me and thee. And Laban said unto Jacob, Behold this heap, behold this pillar which I have cast betwixt me and thee. This heap be witness, and this pillar be witness, that I will not pass over this heap to thee, and that thou shalt not pass over this heap and this pillar unto me for harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge betwixt us. And Jacob sware by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered sacrifice upon the mount, and called his brethren to eat, and they did eat bread, and tarried all night in the mount. And early in the morning Laban rose up and kissed his sons and daughters and blessed them, and Laban departed and returned into his place. So they make a heap, a remembrance. You see that quite often in the Bible. Piles of stones are made so that two things can happen. The first thing that Laban and Jacob want to happen is, let's say one day Jacob is angry with Laban a year from now. And so he gets with his camel and a few of his men and they start marching back to go visit Laban. And there is that pile. And that pile is there to serve as a reminder. Let us not be angry at each other as we pass by. And let us not go past this pile of rocks if we intend to do harm to each other. Same thing for Laban. You can imagine Laban going back to his home, and a few days later he changes his mind. He's all upset with Jacob, and so he gets back onto his animals, and he takes a few men, and he too, in his anger, starts marching towards Canaan, and then he sees that pile, and that too acts as a reminder. So that's one. Another thing is that we see in the Bible quite often, big piles are a reason so that what will happen between children and their parents? What's the reason of making piles of stones in the Bible? That God wants to happen between children and parents. Amber? Yeah. Father, there's a big heap of stones over there. That's one thing to see a stone here or there in the desert, but a big heap like that, Father, what do you think that's there for? And he can say, well, let me tell you the story. That heap is there. It's called Galid, Mizpah. It's a story. Let me tell you a story about two of our forefathers, or one of our forefathers, Jacob and his uncle Laban. And they can tell then the story of that as well. Okay? All right, now Jacob has to meet Esau because they have to get back together, and that's what we see in verse 32. And Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Then Jacob saw them and said, this is God's host. And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother unto the land of Seir, and to the country of Edom, and he commanded them, saying, thus shall you speak unto my lord Esau. Thy servant Jacob said thus, I have sojourned with Laban, and stayed there until now. Okay? So, Jacob is heading back home. He's got questions in his mind. As he's traveling, he's probably thinking, boy, what is my brother going to think about me? My brother's still angry with me. When I left, many years ago, 20 years ago, he wanted to kill me. I wonder if he still has those same feelings. I wonder if he'll kill me. I wonder if he'll wipe out my family. He's probably become a great nation by now and has, well, I know my father's blessing was that he would have a sword in his hand and always be battling with the other nations in the land of Canaan. I wonder if he'll come out and battle me. I wonder if he'll come and kill me and my wives and my children and steal my herds because I stole the birthright blessing from him. Those are all questions that are going through Jacob's mind. Those are good questions. Okay? And Jacob has some concerns. We're not going to continue reading all of the things here, but it's time to meet Esau. So what does Jacob do? He sends some of his servants ahead, sends them to the land of Edom, where Esau lives, and he wants the messengers to tell Esau that Jacob is coming back. Your brother, we work for him. We are his people. But he wants them to address Esau and say, thy brother is thy servant. He's afraid. So Jacob thinks he has to say things and do things that will appeal to his brother. If his brother is still angry, say things and do things that will maybe calm the anger of his brother. Okay, we know that. In our own manipulating ways, sometimes we see when somebody else is angry. Your brother, sister, you just did something to them, and they're very angry, and who are they going to go off and run and tell, Jennifer? And so what do you do, Jennifer? Yeah, or here, have a candy, Natalie. Don't go tell mom and dad, right? Here. Or you try to get them to do things, right, Logan? So that old Trent won't go tell mom and dad what you just did to him. All right? We try to manipulate the situation. We try to calm them down so it won't be so bad and maybe we won't get in trouble. That's what Jacob is trying to do here. He's trying to make sure his brothers call him. I'll say that I am his servant, my people will say, that go ahead of me. And he's going to send with them great gifts, large numbers of oxen and asses and everything else, so that it's a gift to his brother Esau. That will maybe calm him, realizing that I'm not coming back, because that's probably also in Jacob's mind. Jacob left with nothing. Esau has probably inherited his father's herds. And now Esau probably thinks, well, here comes Jacob back, and Jacob's going to steal all my herds and everything else. So Jacob wants to show Esau, I'm rich. I've got everything I need. I'm not going to take anything of yours. He's trying to do what we do with our own brothers and sisters when we realize that we've caused trouble with them. Okay? So he does all those things. Now Jacob still is not quite trusting in God here. He puts a lot of trust in himself. Okay? Because what he does is he gets ready for the meeting. Okay? And he does some things. We see in verse 22, he rose up that night and took his 2 wives, so Leah and Rachel, and his 2 women servants, okay, Zilpah and Bilhah, and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jacob, and he took them and sent them over the brook, and sent over that he had. He splits up his herds and all his servants, everything. He puts one in the forefront, and those that he really cares about, his wives and his children, he puts them back over the brook. It will take some time for Esau, if Esau is really angry and he's really coming to destroy him, it'll take some time to kill those first servants, to gather all those flocks, and to cross over the brook Jabbok. In that time, there's enough time for Jacob and his wives and his children to take off and start running the other way. Maybe they can get a head start to get away from Esau. He's still trusting in himself. He doesn't trust in the Lord quite yet. Now, Jacob had also made a promise to God about returning to some place. We don't see him returning to that place just here. What was the name of that place that Jacob had promised he would return to one day? It was the same place he rested his head on that pillow of rocks. Bethel. It's not where he's back at here. Don't think that he's back here at Bethel. But let's see an important part of the end of this lesson. Jacob is wrestling. He wrestles. Verse 24. So everyone follow along. Verse 24 of chapter 32. And Jacob was left alone. So he's alone in his tent, or alone there on the ground. And there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. So all night long, through the darkness of the night, Jacob wrestled with a man. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh. Okay? Meaning this man, who's really an angel, who's wrestling with Jacob, wrestled with him all night, and could not prevail against him, means he could not beat him. So he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh. He touched the side of his thigh there. Okay? The hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. So he caused that hip to come out of joint. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaketh." So this is the angel talking to Jacob, saying, "Jacob, let me go, the day is breaking." And he said, "I will not let thee go, except thou bless me." So Jacob says, "No, I want to be blessed." And he said unto him, "What is thy name?" So this is the angel saying to Jacob, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." And he said, "Thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel." So he changed his name, just like Abram was changed to Abraham, and Sarai changed to Sarah. Jacob is now changed to Israel. "For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed." And Jacob asked him and said, "Tell me, I pray thee, thy name." So he wants to know the name of this man, this angel that he's wrestling with. And he said, the angel, "Wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name?" And he blessed him there. And Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen God face to face, and my life is preserved. And as he passed over Peniel, the sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. That means he had a limp in his step. "Therefore the children of Israel eat not of the sinew which shrank, which is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh in the sinew that shrank." Doesn't mean the people of Israel are eating humans there. It means animals and a certain part of the muscle they don't eat. Okay? So Jacob wrestles here with God. He's unable to sleep that night, and there that angel of God wrestles with him. And Jacob is being taught here, he has to trust in the Lord. But again, Jacob goes on the offensive here in the wrestling match, and he gets that blessing here. He does not want just any blessing. He wants the blessing that his people, his seed, of course, would be God's elect. And he should know that already, because God has promised that to Abraham and to Isaac. Okay? And so they wrestle all night. Okay? So we see that here. Now, looking at your questions, I think we covered Almost everything there. D, what did seeing the angels remind Jacob of from an earlier text, Amber?
Probably his dream.
Yeah, his dream at Bethel. Yep, his dream there, and especially that he needed to return there. All right. So, we covered all those things there as well. So, tomorrow we'll see Jacob in their actual meeting with Esau, what goes on between the two, and then finally Jacob will return to Bethel and complete that promise that he made to God as he left.